Hello, everybody. I'm Tony Young, President and CEO of Rise San Diego. Thank you for being a part of this tonight. We are going to talk about just some very sensitive issues, things that have affected our community, not only here in San Diego, but throughout the entire country. We're going to talk about what we have titled the virus of hate. And as you all know, there's been a tremendous amount of hate and violence against our Asian community. And it is something that is troubling to all of us here at Rise. I grew up in a neighborhood where, my friends and the people that I spent time with and ate food with and went to parties with and grew up with and raised our kids with um, are from the API community. And it hurts me and it hurts all of us here at Rise. And we are here to talk about it, maybe hear a little bit more about what is going on and what can be done, and hear from you also. A little bit about Rise. Rise is really about supporting leadership, nonprofits, and civic engagement in the urban community. And we've been around for 6 years, and we focus on making sure that just true, authentic leadership is in the communities that we care about. We support authentic leadership in the communities that we serve. I want to talk a little bit about the community guidelines. Just so you know, all the attendees are muted, so you all are watching, but there's not an opportunity for you to speak vocally, but you can definitely use the Q&A box that is in the bottom of your screen. And we will read some of your questions and answers or comments. It'll be kind of another discussion that's happening during the visual discussion that you have. And we'll try to get to many of your questions. And just so you know, the webinar is being recorded. And so if you miss some of it, you can actually go onto Facebook and see it later at our Facebook page for Rise San Diego. Really excited about this amazing group of advocates and leaders in our community. The moderator is a Rise faculty member and fellow, Virtual Ramos. He's the social media manager for Policy Link, but he's also, as I said, a Rise faculty member and has been a part of our family for a long time. Anjanette Mariah Ramey, founder and executive director of Mariah Performing Arts, is also a part of our Rise family, and she is somebody that we care and love tremendously. Viet Ma, social innovation strategist, also a Rise fellow, but also a very vocal individual in our community that we really appreciate. He's a poet, he's a scholar, he's all those things, and a teacher. Rachel Martinez, assistant director of Souls at the University of San Diego. She is a great partner for us. And Carmela Prudencio, sorry, Carmela, marketing and communication director at Pacific Arts Movement. So we really want to thank all of you all for being a part of this. And thank you for spending your time and giving your knowledge to us as we move through this difficult time and find ways to fight back on this. Virtual, it's all up to you now.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate it. We had this scheduled way before the events of what happened last Tuesday, those harmful, hateful events. And before we go into this discussion, I would like us to at least take a little bit of time out to acknowledge those that were affected by this hate crime. So if you will please indulge me in the next 5 seconds to do so. Okay, so thank you for that. And our thoughts are with the families as they continue to go through this tragedy. And that brings us to what we're here to talk about today. We're going to just jump right into it. We have a loaded, brilliant panel with us, and I completely have faith that they're going to be able to speak on this topic brilliantly. I have no other words from that. So we're just going to kind of kick it off. The first question that we're going to start off with is, how has the recent spike in hate affected AAPI communities? And if anyone would like to begin with this one, that'd be stellar.
Hey, Virgil, I'd like to start off with this question.
Please, Carmela.
Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. You know, with the recent spike in hate, harassment, and violence towards Asian and Pacific Islander communities, one ray of hope that I have seen is I'm seeing more Asian Americans get active, join organizations, and use their platforms to advocate for our communities. And that is something that I feel has been a long time coming for our communities to galvanize around something that's happening, because for so long, I feel like a lot of our communities have been in silos. I also think that the visibility of these amazing organizations and organizers that I'm so grateful to work with is increasing with the participation in movement work. I know for myself, I have been active in AAPI spaces for not a very long time. I've worked mostly in arts and culture spaces, and I'm really grateful that Pacific Arts Movement found me, and it was a great intersection of all of my interests. And so with everything that's been going on the past couple years and the work that I've been doing with representation in film and media, I'm also discovering a lot myself. And with the incidents that have been happening in the past year since COVID-19 pandemic started, I'm seeing how I can use the skills that I have as an artist and as a curator to be able to amplify these voices too.
Thank you, Carmela. Carmela is also connected to a lot of different activist movements down here in San Diego, like Asian Solidarity Collective and SDI AAPI Against Hate, I believe is the name. I forget the name of the group, but the coalition, yes.
San Diego API Coalition. I feel like if I wasn't doing this work in arts and culture spaces, I don't know if I would have found all these organizations myself. And even with the events and all of that happening, I've been seeking community and I found it. And I think that's what's really leading me towards the healing of this moment that's happening too.
That's perfect. Thank you. Rachel, would you like to talk about the recent spike of hate?
It's good to be here with you all. I'm very grateful to have this space to talk about these things. And I think in stating the obvious, our communities are afraid, and we are just kind of living in a moment of a time of fear. And I think if we look back across history, though, this isn't new. This is just contextualized in a different time, and we are being blamed for something that is out of our control, and we become the scapegoat for why this virus exists and is spreading to no fault of our own. And so I think, even speaking for myself as an Asian American woman, it's how do I continue to feel empowered in the way that I move in this world, knowing that I could largely be unsafe and I could be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And in particular, our elders who are vulnerable in their own kind of way. And so even for me personally, my parents walk every morning for exercise. And so we're on FaceTime and I'm telling them that they have to be careful, right? Ingat kayo, because you just never know. And I think that it's a reasonable thing to feel right now. And as much as we want to center being strong and want to center having both feet firmly planted and facing everything and all of these things, I think it's also very real that it's okay to be scared and it's okay to be sad. And I think we're feeling a lot of mourning and we're grieving as a community, and also in solidarity with a lot of the other communities that have felt this in many different forms over the last how many hundreds of years.
Thank you. Anjanette or Viet, would you like to speak on this as well?
Sorry, I'm in a noisy environment. I'm actually at my studio, Mariah Performing Arts, and I'm here with about 10 little.
Anjanette, I think we may have, you're breaking on us.
I'll come in.
PI ones.
Am I coming in?
But I
Yeah, I
also at
think
the
we'll
same
go
time
back to,
don't feel sick.
we're gonna go back to
Oh, I'm
Anjanette.
sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, sorry, Anjanette, you're kind of breaking on
Can you
us.
hear me?
We're gonna come back to you though,
Okay.
okay? But right now we'll go with Viet.
Hi, everybody. You know, when this panel was put together and I was notified, you know, to participate, I felt like, okay, cool, I could do this. And then Tuesday happened, and I wasn't so sure. I've been hearing from a lot of voices. I've been hearing from people who are not Asian. I've been hearing from people who are Asian and are extremely scared. They are in in a lot of pain, and it it is nothing new, right? Like this violence in America, when it's applied to marginalized communities, is nothing new. What makes this a huge thing for me right now is that we have an opportunity to address how we as Asian people fit or are positioned in the racial caste system that is America and beyond. I've seen spaces where they are asking for allyship, for allies to pull up, and and then sometimes it's like, how come allies aren't showing up? And I kind of get why, and that's a little bit of what I want to hopefully address a little further, and it has to do with the model minority myth.
Oh, we're definitely going to talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
'Cause
So
that's a
I'm
big
done
old
for
thing
now.
to unwrap and unpack.
I'm done for now.
No,
I'm
I
done for
appreciate
now.
it, Viet.
Thank you.
Anjanette, are you in a space where you're able to kind of speak on this a little bit?
Yeah, can you hear me? Is that better? Oh, awesome. Sorry, I'm at the studio right now. I am at Mariah Performing Arts, and I think I just had to find a quiet corner. Yeah, it's been a heavy week. I just can't stop crying. I'm sorry. I think as Asian Americans, we feel like I feel like sometimes that model minority, for going into that we have to be stoic and quiet and subservient and obedient or perfect or whatever the words. And I can't seem to hold it together. And I have children downstairs in the studio that probably don't know what's going on in the world. They look like me. They see people, their teaching artists look like me. I'm in a space where I created because I wanted safety. I come from the arts and culture world, and I've worked in mostly predominantly white spaces. And I've been that token Asian girl, token brown face, yellow face, whatever you want to call it, and never really felt safe or didn't even know how to talk about it or identify what was really happening. And so I feel like in 20 years being in PWIs, like, it's sad, but it's also true that these incidences now people are talking about it. But I'm like, this has been going on for so long, and now I feel like there's a name for it, or we can call it something, or we can identify. And this happened with the Black Lives Matter movement. Like, this has been going on for centuries, it takes these senseless acts for us to be able to be comfortable to speak out about it. But why does it have to take people to die for us to take action and change? Why? And so I'm having a hard time. I'm just having a really hard time, but I also know that we cannot stay silent. We cannot be complicit in not speaking out against this wrongness. And we need to create those safe spaces. And so I'm doing everything in my power here to make sure that our future generations, our generations now, our elders, don't feel like they have to live in fear, that they feel a sense of safety and belonging. And so I think I feel empowered in a way that I created this space. As hard as it is, I don't feel safe. I can't un-Asianify myself. I can't, I have cute purple hair and gray in there, but it's still, I am clearly Asian. And I want to be able to leave my house, go into my car without having to look over my shoulder, thinking that I could get killed. It is a thing. And I even told my husband, I mean, it's so sad. Couldn't you drive me? Could you drive me to the hospital so I can pick up my prescription? Should I buy a taser or some mace or why am I thinking these things? It's just, it's awful, and it's got to stop. And I think as we unite, if we unite together as a community, and our white allies, my husband's white, I see you, Matt, become our white shield. We talk about the white shield. I have to educate my white family members to be white shield for me. Literally put your white body in front of me and protect me. That's one thing I ask white people to do, is be our white shield. And if you see any acts of hatred or violence towards our brown and black communities, you have to say something. You have to do something. If you don't, you're complicit in racism.
Thank you, Anjanette. Anjanette is, again, broadcasting out of her studio, her dance studio, which is almost different than what we typically do as Asians, right? It's so which will lead us to the model minority myth conversation. And some people don't know what the model minority myth is. They typically look at us Asians as the model minority and use that as an example to wedge a divide between other Black and brown communities, to have us as the stellar example. But how has the model minority myth influenced our response to this escalating violence against these Asian American communities? I know that Via, you wanted to speak on model minority. Are you at a good place to speak about it?
Yes. So high level, just kind of a general, what the model minority myth is this idea that Asian people are assimilate the best in American society. This idea that we don't rock the boat, we do what we are told. This kind of, we made it. We came from refugee countries as refugees, and now we have upward mobility in the United States because we worked hard, we're smart. These are stereotypes, right? And this is the image that is put out here in the world. There are also negative stereotypes, but for this one, it's kind of this image that we are better than. And that means better than what? Better than our other marginalized communities, right? So when I hear, this is about to get real for me, and I'm trying to find the words to not offend anybody. Sometimes I get frustrated when other Asian people don't understand why I fight so hard for other ethnicities, and to almost wonder and it almost sometimes feels like people want to compete, or they may feel like, oh, all lives matter, and so we came from the bottom and we made it, so if you can just do this, then you guys can have it too. And what is lacking in that rhetoric is that we need a understanding of the historical injustice and the disparities that are put against people, black and brown people, just straight up melanin. And that's frustrating. So I'm conflicted right now because yes, stop Asian hate, but I almost want to be like, stop all hate, right? And then I start thinking like, well, do I sound like all lives matter right now? And I'm like, I'm really trying to find the piece that is going to help unite us as people who are living in pain, people who are living as if our country does not love us. And that's where I'm speaking from. So that's all I have to say for now. I'd love to hear more on how people are, how they take the model minority myth. I'm done.
Thank you, Via. That you raised very great points, and I think they often use us to other others, and raise us as a shining example that says, why can't you do the thing that they're doing? If they can do it, you can do it too. Whereas they pit us against each other, knowing full well that the enemy is actually white supremacy. So they're trying to pit us against each other. This model minority myth. Rachel, I'm going to jump to you on this one to continue the model minority myth conversation.
Yeah, my head is spinning because there are so many thoughts and I'm trying to synthesize them all. And yeah, I mean, the model minority myth is a manipulative tool by white supremacy to continue to keep all of us from uniting in solidarity with one another. And so we are placed on this pedestal we didn't ask to be put on, to then point to other Black and Brown communities to be like, they made it, how come y'all didn't? Why aren't you working hard enough? Which we all know, and if you don't know, it's all false. So I think with regards to all of these hate crimes and attacks, it means that they assume we're good, that we got this, and that we don't need help. There's a reason why it wasn't trending. There's a reason why it wasn't being talked about, because the issues in our community were not considered important, that it's up to us. And I think we are in the digital age and we do have the opportunity to create noise and create buzz around the things that matter to us. And I'm seeing the number of participants go up. I know folks are really tuning in to what we have to say, and I'm excited that we're being listened to. At the same time, though, at some point, the hashtag is going to stop trending. And how is this moment in time going to change you? How is it going to change me as an individual person? What are you going to take away from this moment that will shift the way you move in this world? I think I went in a different direction with this question. But yeah, I think,
That's okay. That's okay too.
We're not being listened to, we're not being taken seriously. And it's up to us to be heard, to demand that attention. And I think we're doing that.
Thanks. And Jeanette, so you want to speak on this one?
Yeah, model minority. I got a lot of pressure from my parents, oh, A-, why didn't you get an A+? Even within our own communities, we have to be models to ourselves and to each other. But as a person that has chosen sort of a non-traditional career path, there's another model minority myth is that, yes, my parents are immigrants. I was born and raised here, but there's that we sacrifice so much, you must, fight for the American dream. And what is the American dream? it almost feels like an American nightmare to me. It's like, I almost feel like, why did we even come here if we can't feel like we're free and build that American dream? I'm a small business owner. I'm an artist. Like, who picks that? Why would you leave the safety of your own country to come here just to feel the same, to not have any freedoms for what you thought you were coming here for? And so I've been in mostly predominantly white spaces, as I said, in the arts and culture community. I think there's a lot of unconscious bias towards me, that people see me as this tiny little Asian girl that is not going to say anything, that is not going to speak out against injustice or racism. I see it. And guess what? They mess with the wrong Asian woman, because I am pretty darn loud. And I think they're shocked when I actually speak truth. And it's not gotten me the popular vote. I've been fired from jobs. I've been asked to leave spaces. It's scary and it's uncomfortable. And I think I cause, tension and discomfort. And I think we have to, as Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, Black and Brown people, speak up and say what we see. Because then again, our silence is complicity if we succumb to that model minority of like, oh, they ain't gonna say anything, they're not gonna say anything. She's that quiet girl or whatever, and I've been in spaces where I'll look at other people, I'm like, why didn't you say anything? You gotta back me up, sis, bruh. Like, back me up. Don't you see what I see? Like, if one does and we don't all do together, we don't advance change. We don't. Our liberation. This is the shirt, Birch, when we were doing people power, or when you were for ACO. Our liberation. We're bound together. We're not free until, like, if it's sort of saying like we can't be free until we're all free. Like our intersectionalities are intertwined. Even our all marginalized folks. If I see my LGBTQ plus community suffering, or immigrant, refugee, or DACA folks, our children, our elderlies, I'm gonna say something. I'm going to say something. And I hate it. I am exhausted, but I can't stop. And I think it was Rachel that just said that, this is gonna not trend. So, like, we stop putting the black squares, if I see a yellow square, I'm going to scream. If I see yellow squares on social media, I'm going to just, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But
Oh,
like,
they tried
okay,
it, sis. They tried it.
okay, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm waiting for it.
Yeah,
And see, and it's that expectation, like, okay, we got to stop this. And then when it's not popular or trendy anymore, like, then what? Like, we cannot let our foot off the gas, because then it's this resurgence again. We're going to wait till somebody else dies, and we cannot do that. So let's not be that model minority. We got to cause a ruckus.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit further then, right? Because like you said, you're loud, a little bit rambunctious, and I love that about you, first of all, foremost. But there are a lot of common misconceptions that people have about, Asians in general. And I want to be also, I'm going to name the fact that, majority of us here are Filipino, Viet, and we're not necessarily representing, Southeast Asians, South Asians, and then some more like Chinese and then Japanese folks. But I just wanted to name that, but speak to the, not necessarily speak to their experience, or because I can't, but also standing in solidarity. We'll also speak about solidarity later on down the line. But let's talk about the common misconceptions that folks have, and how do we combat them? Like Anjanette, you're doing it actively. Carmela, so how do we do that? How do we communicate more effectively these misconceptions, to combat these misconceptions?
First, I just want to say, Anjanette, like, I've been following your work for a long time, and this is actually the first time we've ever gotten to interface with each other, but I resonate so much with your story and working in those arts and culture spaces. So I understand that. And I understand how that is kind of causing tension between my family and me and what their expectations are. And, growing up as a first generation Filipino American, I saw both of my parents get naturalized. I remember those moments. I was the first American in my family. But growing up with that immigrant background meant that I always saw us differently. I would describe Filipinos as passionate and fierce and with fire in our hearts. I would never call us submissive or docile or any of those things. And seeing how that's portrayed in the media and seeing the lack of representation of those type of Asians like us really hurts us in the end. And it really hurts the response of folks looking at situations like what happened in Georgia and not taking it as seriously as it should be. And, you know, I think the biggest way that I try and combat this is just like Anjanette, just being loud. And that's just being myself too. Like, this is not a facade or anything like that. When we see injustice, we speak up about it for all communities. And I know too that I had an emotional conversation with my mom about her coming to this country. And anytime she thinks I'm a wild child or some weird artsy kid or whatever that looks like, I remind her like she came here and all that hard work that she's done so that I can live this life is so that I can make those choices for myself, so that I can choose these paths, because that's what they were working towards. That's why they came here. You know, that's why my dad worked so many different types of jobs growing up. That's why they lived in a tiny apartment with just me and my sister, you know, in New Jersey too. So like, it's definitely something that I just want to live myself, and working with other communities, organizers, and the youth, being able to empower everybody and really look to my mentors and how I can emulate that and how we can combat all of these misconceptions.
Thanks. Thank you. Viet, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've always had a hard time talking about injustice with my family, and I often feel like an outcast because of it. And so, for the first time, I became real passionate in talking to my dad yesterday, and he heard me out. Um, you know, a little background: I didn't grow up with my dad, so it's just kind of this like catching up time type of phase between him and I, and it's a good journey that I'm on in terms of learning about my own identity, learning about my family history beyond me being in San Diego. Um, and so when I expressed, I asked him, "Did you hear about what happened in Atlanta?" And he goes, "Oh yeah." And it what's interesting is that he didn't seem to have any kind of like anger about it, right? Like it wasn't a shock to him, or he just he heard me out, and he heard that I was in pain because of it. And I if I raise my voice, like I definitely couldn't have this conversation with my mom in this time, because I get so passionate, and then it comes off as like I'm selling out, my family, like I'm betraying my mom. Like that's kind of what it feels like, and how I interpret some of the pushback. And so me having an opportunity to speak out publicly now, and still stumbling over like how I'm supposed to come across, is me exploring this idea that, what, we may not have it figured out, but at least we can, say that, look, I feel your pain too, and I'm glad you feel mine too, right? Because I some of the feedback that I've gotten from the public has been like, you need to love yourself. You can't live in fear. uh there's an addiction to fear. And I'm like, what does that have to do with just what happened? I don't think any of the people that went to the spa that day were thinking that I'm going to fear for my life today. If anything, they were living their best life. And so this idea that, oh, why can't we be a oneness? Well, I'm preaching to the choir here. We can be oneness, but there are other people out there that don't feel like we even belong in their sphere. They don't even see us as oneness because they think of us as other. They think of us like we're less than human. They can shoot us down like dogs. And this is the urgency. This is not just about Stop Asian Hate. It's about people's disregard for human lives just because they're frustrated. And that's the point I also want to acknowledge is that, look, America is hurting. Figure out how to deal with your pain and not target us. We're not the ones causing your pain. And I'm speaking to the people who are in denial that this racism exists. That's the puzzle I'm trying to get. And maybe it's not us for it's not our job. We can't teach them that racism exists. Maybe we just look out for each other. Maybe that's what it looks like. Right? How do I look out for you, Virtual? Anjanette, Rochelle, Tony, Carmela? Like, how do I look out for you guys more? That's kind of where I'm at now.
I'm with you.
Done.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's dead on. No, that's perfect. We need to understand what solidarity looks like, not just within Asian communities, but with other communities as well, right? Like, so the question that I'd like to pose is, how do we balance the pursuit of justice, for the crime victims, and then also have an increasing understanding and solidarity between Asian and Black communities? I'm going to go with Rachel on this one.
So I think the thing that's coming front of mind right now is that solidarity is unconditional. And what I mean by that is that we are all hurting in a number of different ways. And historically, we've seen so many different communities targeted in different ways, and it all points to white supremacy at the end of the day. And so I think part of what it means to unpack these hate crimes is, what does justice look like as a result? And if we're looking to what we're used to using for justice in our society, which is the carceral state, police, prisons, all of these things, they were not set up for justice for us. And so I think, for example, one of the attacks in the Bay Area, I saw Daniel Day Kim was dedicating $25,000 to information on the attacker. And I saw that on my timeline and I was like, that doesn't feel quite right. And it's because pursuing that means that we'll have a member of the Black community imprisoned and having to move through that system. And that's supposed to be justice when we know it's not. And I think the other piece to this is also the anti-Blackness that is in Asian communities that we're not going to pretend is not there. And I see over the last year, the tension between the two communities, when we've historically had so much solidarity and unity between the Asian and Black communities specifically. And it's become one of reciprocity and exchange. I'm going to show up for you because you show up for us, or why should I show up for you because you haven't shown up for us? And that's what I mean by solidarity being unconditional, because inherently that we all deserve to exist and live, and not because of all these other conditions. So when I'm talking about anti-Blackness in the Asian community, it's you cannot expect solidarity from the Black community if you are moving in anti-Black ways. And how are you examining your behaviors, and how are you checking the people in your life so that you're creating safe spaces for them? So it's complicated and also at the same time pretty simple. And I'll stop there.
We are complex. Very complex.
Sorry,
Carmela, please.
I was gonna say, Rachel, you said everything I was going to say. The carceral state is inherently anti-Black. These white supremacist systems are inherently anti-Black. And vigilante justice and punitive mindsets are not sustainable for us to be able to uproot this oppression. The carceral state affects Black, brown communities, Asian communities, and they're looking to deport us. They're looking to put us behind bars, and we need to undo all of that. We cannot create the social change we need by subscribing to these systems that are built to oppress us. And that's what we can do in solidarity with other communities is abolish these things, you know? I believe that we're gonna get to that world, and I wanna move through all these spaces like we're already there. And that's how we build that world we wanna see, is if we put it into practice every day in all the circumstances and analyze and unlearn things that we've been conditioned to know. I want to see less carceral responses from folks. I know Rachel mentioned Daniel Day Kim, and I know a lot of folks are seeking justice, but we're not going to be able to seek justice with these systems at all.
I agree. These systems have been built in place for ages now, right? Like if you look at the Chinese Exclusion Act, they continue to legislate against us, right? If you look at Executive Order 9066, which led to the Japanese internment camps, they continue to legislate against us. These are laws, and like they built these systems to kind of break us. Anjanette, how do we balance that pursuit of justice for the victims, but also increase that solidarity with other communities?
We got to create our own systems and burn some. I like somebody just said, burn them down. We have to be involved politically. I worked for the city of San Diego, and I had to leave. We talked about an inside-outside approach, and being on the inside, it for me was much harder because I had to secretly organize with my people on the outside. But I felt alone because again, the institutional racism is alive and well within our own government. So I was on the inside trying to organize with the outside, and I think it gave me cancer. Honestly, the stress, the the compounding of the responsibility and the weight that we carry as the token Asian, or the person who's not supposed to speak, but also be speaking out to dismantle these systems, is a lot of weight to carry. So if we live, and I said, I survived cancer, and I say that I want to not be the change you wish to see. I be the change I'm living to see. Because every day I leave my house now, I'm afraid I could get killed. Just like these women, these Asian women who went to work. They went to work and they did not come back. Who thinks that they would leave their house to go to work and be targeted? I have a target on my back because of the way I look. And so, but you know what? I'm a fighter. I've experienced many near-death experiences, and I just accepted it as part of my life. But I did not think that, okay, cancer, I could fight. I fought a brain hemorrhage. Those are things that, happenstance, health issues that came along. Racism, we can change. I can't change. There's no cure for cancer. I believe there is a cure for racism and hate. And it starts within our hearts, and it starts within our systems, and it starts within the people. The people, if we want to be the change we live to see, that I lived and fought hard to live to see, then we need to create our own systems, our own spaces, and we have to change. This is why I created Mariah. I was sick and tired of waiting. I thought I could die and never see the day that Black and brown people will feel safe. Except, you can see right here in the background, Black and brown folks making art, feeling safe. I created this because guess what? I don't know. I can't name. I worked in arts and culture for 20 years. I worked for the largest funder of arts and culture funding in the city of San Diego, and 20 years, nothing changed. We need philanthropy. We need folks with money to invest in communities. We need revolutionary philanthropy. With no trickle down philanthropy. I'm so sorry. I'm so sick and tired of seeing white folks with money giving to white institutions who then trickle it down to brown and black folks. That is white savior mentality. That is a form of white supremacy, and that needs to stop as well. Give directly to BIPOC and Black and brown communities, because your return on investment, trust me, will go a lot farther when it is unconditional. We are not trying to get a trophy or say these are our people. Let us help our people in the best way we know how, because we have the same fear, the same lived experiences. We know how to serve our people best. So that is another call to action for my white allies on this call, my philanthropists, people who have access to resource. Invest in us. Invest in us. Talk to your other white friends and white folks. Tell them what's going on. Have these be uncomfortable. Don't rely on us to be uncomfortable every day. You you can walk and be safe going down the street or going to work and not fear you're going to die because you're white. So use your privilege, be that white shield, and stand up for us, with us, by us, on behalf of us. I think that is something we can all do today, like right now. You can post something on social media, you can donate to an organization. There's a lot of people hurting right now, and you can invest in making the change that we all live and deserve to see.
Thank you, Antoinette. You are part of making that change. And I think we are in a place where we're able to create the future that we want to see, right? But kind of what to the points that were spoken about earlier is that we don't want to continue with these cycles of harm that have been hurting our communities for all this time, right? And a lot of those are rooted in anti-Blackness. So how does this anti-Blackness relate to the anti-Asian attacks that have been going on? I'm going to go with the Viet on this one right here to start us off. This is going to go to everyone, though, I believe.
I've been trying to build alliances most of my life, and I have to shout out the Erin Price Fellows Program in City. They're now in City Heights, based in City Heights. The Price family, they put on this organization or mentoring program called the Erin Price Fellows. It taught me from 9th grade on, since I was 14 years old, that there are barriers that divide us, and that we as young people, as people that are from San Diego, the richness that exists, we have a responsibility to claim San Diego and run it the way we want to run it. So throughout the years, that was instilled in me. My mentors are Black, brown men and women. I grew up with a single mom who wanted to protect me. And I didn't know how to respond to that, because I felt that it would not allow me to be with friends and loved ones of different skin tones, of different hair, of different dialects and culture and experiences. Like, for me, I understand a parent's desire to protect their children. I somehow feel that I also need to protect my loved ones. I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm not that guy. But I know that the work I've done has helped ease people's uncertainties about you know, their future. When I'm talking to young people, students, I hope that my impact helps them overcome the ugliness of the world that we live in right now. And so I'm trying to not focus on the ugliness. I think we have an opportunity to heal together, at least as we talk amongst ourselves. I think that's a good start. Those who get it. Those who get it. I've not been this emotional in a long time. And that's my privilege. That's me having the privilege to not feel when it's something else. I don't know exactly why I'm here right now, and I just want to cuss up a storm. And I know I'm in good hands. I know I'm in good company, and I don't need to express anger to anyone here. But I know you guys are gonna receive my anger in a way that's accepting, in a way that's with love. I'm done.
We got you. And you, Viet, you're a hero to me, bro. This is still related to the question on anti-Blackness. And in fact, one of the questions in the chat was, why do Asians hate Black people? So maybe this can be a part of the answer that you might be providing with us, Rachel.
Is the answer not always white supremacy? I mean, as simple as that is. And I think when we're talking about anti-Blackness, we're talking about the attacks, the anti-Asian hatred and all that stuff. It's, what do we do with that? We know these things exist, and what do we do with it? And I think a lot of an easy emotion to access is hopelessness. And the sort of futility of how to combat these so deeply embedded systems of our society. And when I feel those feelings creeping up on me, I think about what I have in my control. And I think all of us as individuals, we have, whether we're aware of it or not, influence over the people around us in the work that we do with our families, the children we interact with, our friends. And when I think about what it means to have values and what it means to act out those values and how that is received by the people around us, I choose to believe that that matters, that counts. And how we show up in spaces and the things that we say, the information that we share, the things we post, all of that moves us closer to the world that for right now only exists in how we imagine and how we hope to attain. So I think it's less about how they're related, but what do we do with that information and what we know about it? And so for example, I work in higher education, which in and of itself is a white supremacist institution. And so how do I rationalize that inherent contradiction? Except that I do know, and I still believe that education can change a family for generations. The presence of a degree can give access and capital to a family. And so as we work to share that access to Black and Brown students, and we invite them to our institutions, they move through our courses and our curriculum, and they fight to see themselves in the syllabi, to see themselves in the books they're reading and the articles that they're assigned. It's people like me, and I'm hoping that in all of your institutions, if there are any college students in the audience, that there are folks like me that understand how challenging it is, that we have been there and we're here to support you so that you can graduate and move on and have access to these spaces that we're hoping to change. And I'll stop there.
Can I chime in on the anti-Black? Can I
Please,
chime in
on Jeanette.
Sorry. I am blessed that I grew up, my parents were very inclusive and welcome. My parents, a lot of you know them, are very active in the Phil-Am community. They taught me how to organize at a very young age, and very loving and inclusive, and never, they just never, it's just people like, that's really odd, you know, like some Filipinos would say, don't go outside, you're gonna get dark, you don't want to get black, you know, like it's a bad thing to have dark skin. And it- I think the melanin that we have in our skin, and we share the same oppression as Black people. You know, Asian Americans share similar oppression as Black people. And I feel like spaces like what we're in right now, and solidarity with our Black community, our Black and brown siblings, we can show up for them in many ways, because again, like I said earlier, our freedom and our liberation are intertwined. They are intertwined. And how do we show up as Asian Americans for our Black and brown? We were here just months ago with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, right? We don't even know the names of the women, the Asian women who were killed. We can't say their names because we don't know them. But there's this similarity of, you know, of the violence and the hate and the skin. But I was just blessed that my parents, I didn't grow up in an anti-Black household. I have a lot of mixed, you know, Black family members, and I don't know, it's just embedded in me that I give and I support the Black community. I show up for the Black community. I provide safe and healing spaces for our Black community. I mentor Black and brown young artists and emerging nonprofit professionals. I go into Black spaces. I do what I can, because I also acknowledge my privilege as a non-Black POC, as a non-Black person of color. We even have very mindful teaching artists who are AAPI that teach hip hop fundamentals, and the hip hop culture came from the Black community. So we're very mindful not to appropriate things that weren't ours, or like, oh, we love, you know, and there's also that stereotype like, oh, Filipinos love dancing, they love hip hop and all that. We did not create it, and we're not going to take credit for it. Yeah, you know, we do teach it here, and we teach breaking. But Dino, you saw Dino upstairs in the back, and when I reached out to Dino, I said, hey, I'd love for you to teach breaking here. And he said, you know, I'm a non-Black POC, and like, can we offer it to one of our Black siblings? That's how we show up for our Black brothers and sisters. That's how we show solidarity. And I don't know, that word anti-Blackness, it triggers me for some reason. Like it's not in my vernacular. It's like not a word I would choose. I would like to change that vernacular and say, like, how do we show up for, you know, like pro-Black? Can we say that instead? Maybe it has a connotation than anti-Black. That means don't like Black. Like you just said, Ferch, like, why do Asians hate Black people? I'm like, okay, can we say, like, these are the reasons why I love Black people, you know, and I am pro-Black, and I am, you know, like in a positive way. I think it will change the message and the meaning and how we move forward in a positive way. So I think words and the words we choose and how we show up for each other really does matter. So we just have to be mindful in the way we show up and what we say and how we do it. And yeah.
Yeah, no one wins the oppression Olympics, right? Carmela, do you want to speak on this?
You know, the system was designed to pit us against each other. And I think about the colonization of the Philippines and how the Spanish colonists rewarded other Filipinos for driving indigenous people off their land by extracting resources from their land. And that is emulated here in this country too. Like the history of imperialism still exists in the systems that we see nationally here. And we can unlearn that from ourselves. We can remove that from our programming and really liberate ourselves from these chains that these systems put on us so that they can succeed. so that we fail. And so that these, like, I think there's a term, we've been used as racial wedges, Asian Americans, in these conversations. And I think we have the opportunity in this moment in time to remove that wedge and to really move forward and think through what our collective liberation looks like.
Yes, collective liberation. I often speak about the future that we want to build and create. So that is definitely how I want to see that. I'm going to move to a question from the audience. We had a question about from an anonymous attendee that says, I see a lot of people posting, quote, support Asian businesses as a way to show love that feels very performative. And they want to make sure that they're doing what the community needs. So I kind of want to ask you all, what are ways that, you know, folks can show their support? Maybe are there community-based resources that folks should know about? And if there are, potentially drop it in the chat. It sounds like Anjanette, you want to jump on this one first.
I am a Asian women business owner. I mean, here we are in my business. And okay, you know, there are these SBA loans, stimulus loan, government, they say these are small women, minority business. I have not got one, not one single. It's all the funding that I've received to build this space has been from my family, my personal retirement, and from the community. It's not come from philanthropy in our traditional sense. I can name a lot of funders where I used to work in PWIs or, you know, whiteboard-led organizations that helped BIPOC, where they'll give their money tens and thousands, hundreds and thousands of dollars. There goes our white supremacist and our white savior mentality. I read this article that said that that mentality, they believe that they know better than we do because they have the money and the power and the resource and the access to power. But I think it was Cory Booker that said there is more power in the people than there is in the people who have the power. There is more power in the people than there is in the people who have the power. So how do we collectively organize as brown and black folks to uplift small business owners like me? You know, I could not have done this alone. Like, first, you were there at my grand reopening. You saw who showed up. You saw who showed up. And, you know, I invited a lot of institutional funders and the white folks. They were not here. And so I was disappointed, but also not surprised. Also really not surprised. And I stopped giving up. I mean, I stopped trying because what am I waiting for a miracle to happen? Like some angel donor is gonna come and like save me? But yeah, this just so I'm promoting my small business owners here. Look, I got a new Taekwondo studio. My Korean friends, we just moved in and we made a pact to protect each other. I said I might need some Taekwondo lessons because I need to learn how to like protect myself. We got a tomorrow owned business down here, game bred, MMA. But you have to support women, minority or minority owned businesses. We're struggling right now. We don't have the support from the government. I mean, patronize us. Just come and take a class. What it's mind-boggling to me. I've talked to a lot of predominantly white art institutions, and they're telling me about their $1 million campaigns, $55 million to the Ming Gay Museum. I'm not trying to call them out. I'm pointing to the facts that is at $33 million, you know, in Point Loma, and you know, 2 millions and this and that, all these capital campaigns happening back to white people. And guess what? They're reaching out to me and saying, how can we help you? Like, can you share some of that with me? Like, you know, and then they look to me like, oh, we need your help. We need to help. We got to look like we're doing stuff, you know? And I'm like, okay,
So
I don't have time for that.
And so how do people move past performative allyship?
You got to show up. You got to show up. You have to
What
put
about
your money where your mouth is.
What about to the rest of the panel?
I mean, it's showing up, but I recognize that it's checking in. Sometimes you don't see it. You don't, you know, I do work with my friends. You know what I mean? It's like, it's letting people know that, yo, I fuck with you, you know, excuse my language, but it's like, I got your back, you know, and other outsiders don't need to know that. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's building the coalitions as we work together. I want to share a quick um story that I heard from a friend of mine at Kearney High School, right? Found he reached out to me. He's living in St. Louis. He told me, man, it's rough out here. I'm trying to get my business, and I'm just hearing him out. Like, I'm hearing the struggle in his voice, but he's determined. He's just like, it's crazy out here. And this was during the COVID, like when COVID, like a year ago. So he's like, it's crazy out here. And, but the Chinese food place, we protect that because that's an asset in our community. They like the Asian food, right? So yeah, there are robberies, right? Like, people are struggling, okay? And I'm not even, we'll just say poverty sucks, right? And yet there are people in that community that say we need to protect this Asian business, and they're not Asian, right? Like, this is a different narrative that I wanted to share, because that's what it looks like. It's to say we need to protect this asset in our community because it is valuable. So when we show up, that's one thing, but it's also what Anjanette said: spend your dollars, keep the collective economics going. Like, we need to support each other economically, socially, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and that goes beyond ethnicity. Like, how many of you guys will go to a taco shop after a night of partying, right? Because we're all from San Diego, and we can share those types of cultural experiences, because that's what we know, and that's the San Diego we want to see, and that's what drew me to Rise San Diego. I'm done.
Dope. Thanks, Fiat. I know Rachel wanted to speak on this, and then I'll go to you, Carmela. And then I see Tony, so I know we're close to time boundary. But I definitely want to get those voices in before we finish up today.
Really quickly, I think what I was talking about in terms of leading with your values is how, in the small ways that we move, what are we demonstrating to folks? And so much of that is showing up. And it's also what happens behind closed doors, the language that we use, the jokes we laugh at, the things that we check. All of those things demonstrate our values. And so when we walk into a room, people should know what to expect from us. When we talk with our friends, they should know what to expect from us. And so when problematic things happen, you need to be able to shut that down. And especially, we're in San Diego, which is relative to the rest of the country, pretty racially diverse. And so there are explicit acts of violence that have happened even here. And on the day-to-day basis, it's mostly going to be microaggressive things. And so how are we prepared to address those things in the moment? How are we going to intervene as bystanders if things are happening right in front of us? And so for the folks that are tuning in right now, again, once the hashtags stop trending, this is still going to be an issue. This is still going to be a problem. So what is going to change? What are you going to change about your behavior that's going to make folks like us feel safe, other Black and Brown communities feel safe? Just reflect on that. And your dollar counts, put it where it matters, support small businesses, Black-owned businesses, BIPOC-owned businesses, all of those things. We have to believe that all of our acts matter, no matter how seemingly small, it all counts.
Yes, that. Carmela, please round us out.
I just want to also shine light on the fact that showing up looks different for different folks. And more I've been thinking about accessibility in the work that I've been doing. And, even hearing folks say, like, stand up for Asian folks. Well, what does that really mean? When people hear that, some folks can't stand. Like, there's so many different personal ways that we can contribute to social change and revolution. And I think as long as you understand your intention and are open-hearted to the uncomfortable conversations, to unlearning these unconscious biases and all of those things, that what you contribute to this movement is valid, no matter how small, like Rachel was saying, or how unseen it is. That's it.
That's a wonderful reminder, Carmela. Like we learn differently, we move differently, we act differently, you know, so why do we expect it to look like one blob of like how we move together in the world? Yes, we'll have some kind of unity, but also we need to be graceful and allow folks to show up how they show up. You know, and with that, you know, I want to thank you all of our wonderful panelists. I would say give them a round of applause, but I guess you can kind of snap in your own space. I'll pretend to hear it. But thank you all for your participation. Tony, I believe I'm going to pass it over to you first to kind of close this out. You're muted, my friend. I cannot hear you.
Virtual, I was giving you a compliment. I was telling you that you did such a wonderful job moderating this event. And when it comes to the panelists, you know, obviously you couldn't see what we saw as this thing unfolded, but there was a strong radiance that came out of it. And you all, what I heard was powerful, strong, clear voices and advocates. And not only did you move individuals who watched this, I'm sure, I know I was moved, but I think there was some courage that was instilled in all of us as we heard you guys, as you spoke as really strong people. And I just really want to say how much I appreciate you all being a part of this. And don't underestimate what you did tonight for the people who are watching it. If you just look at the chat room was on fire, Virtual. It was on fire, okay? So that's because people were engaged and you all were just brilliant. So much love. If I'd have thought about it ahead of time, I probably would have had Anjanette like put on like some dance routine or something in the background. But I'll do better next time.
I got you. We got our class, musical theater youth class right now. So
well, just show that background, because while you're showing the background of you with your dance studio, I want to also thank our coalition. We have a coalition of folks that we work with here at RISE. Youth Will, Logan Heights Community Development Corporation, BayPAC, Jacobs Center for Neighborhood Innovation, and the San Diego Foundation, who's a big supporter of RISE San Diego. A little bit more about what's going to come next. Make sure that you tune into our RISE Facebook page or our RISE website, because we offer nonprofit and small business trainings, which we were talking about businesses during the whole discussion here. Well, we try to support nonprofit and small businesses that serve our urban communities. So we have amazing trainings. People take a lot out of those trainings. So if you get a chance, get on our RISE Facebook page or our RISE website, and you'll be able to take part in that. Our next RISE Now event is going to be about something that's vitally important: reopening of education. Because, you know, we're going to have to start sending our kids, or some of us are going to start sending our kids back to school. And the question is, you know, all the anxieties around that, and what is it going to look like? How are we going to make sure everybody's safe? That kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about that on April 8th. Hopefully you all will be a part of it, and we hope we can hear your voices. Again, you all made us proud. You say, you know, you guys are my people, you know, and this is a part of me and my life growing up. And the fact that I know people like you, it makes me really proud. Just a quick feedback survey that we have. Just kind of fill that out. Just kind of giving us an idea of how we did tonight. And we use this to try to improve and make us better, or look at some of our faults. If you get a chance to fill it out, that'll be very helpful. But with that,
Tony.
Yes, sir.
Can I chime in for a quick second?
Sure. Yeah. We get to see
So
while you're talking. So go ahead.
So while we are having our wonderful guests fill out the survey, Viet would like to offer a poem to help close us out. Can we do that?
Oh, of course, yeah. He's he's gonna tear it up, so for sure.
You already know. A
Yeah.
hero to me, I said.
Okay.
Viet, you have the floor, my friend.
Thank you guys for letting me use this space to share poetry. And I, it's weird because somebody accused me of using poetry to self-promote and talking about issues like this, and it was just like, F that. I gotta do my art in order to move some of the compassion, and this poem really speaks to this situation, this thing that we're discussing. I believe that we are meant to be together, but something tells me that the dream of us just might be difficult to manifest into destiny. It's hard to believe in dreams when reality soaks in and it's raining on parades that march in the face of captive audiences. They applaud the idea of us, but the thought of us slips their minds as we pass between lines of doubt and cynicism, and the skepticism is contagious because I too am plagued with sketchy images of caricatured fallacies. So my falling for a false hope of a United States of a marriage type relationship, perhaps my visions of happy matrimony are distorted from bearing witness to adulterated behavior. But regardless of the random rumors that surround us every day, I still can't help but feel that your mass appeal was meant for me. And maybe my jealous tendencies are playing make-believe and trick me into thinking I'm being pawned as another fallen soldier with a wounded heart and scars that mark a lifetime of verbal battles. So I'm trying to forget about our past disputes and growth or differences. I know it's difficult, but when you tell me that you love me, I want to believe you, even though I got tainted thoughts of you only playing mainstream and catering to foreign policies that never bothered to see what you mean to me. So I want to believe that you love me the way love was meant to be, unconditional, without restrictions or limitations and boundless or barriers that distract us from being us. So I want to reinvest in the possibility of us. I went about it all wrong at first when I bought a 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath in an affluent neighborhood just so I could fit in with your desires. I give a portion of my wages to your well-being each paycheck, but each day it gets more demanding. And honestly, I can't stand seeing your financial hardship while knowing your history of impulsive expenses spent on credit. And I wish I could rescue you from recession with bailout funds, but I bought a Toyota instead. Because at $2 to $4.50 a gallon, your economy falling, somehow I knew I'd be driving extra miles just to keep up with you. So I want to stop flattering with false feelings of infatuation and believe in love again, instead of inaccurate accusations of getting fucked again. You see, I want to provide stimulus packages to your heart so our souls can stand on rebuilt infrastructure left over from a corrupt foundation. But I need you to support me whenever I get weak, in sickness and in health, even when I'm not covered with Kaiser from full-time benefits. So how about we resuscitate this relationship and be each other's life support? How about we strengthen more in our First Amendment and rather than our right to remain silent? See, I'm trying to mend our wrongs and write them into the Declaration of Us so we could proudly pledge allegiance under a God who knows the truth of how we came to be. So let me protect your honor. All I ask is that you don't treat me like a foreigner or a criminal or legal or a virus, or question my dedication to you. See, I need you to accept me for my entire identity as I have accepted yours, because I believe in us, despite my insecurities, in spite of other opinions, and regardless of our far from flawless past. So how about we disregard those past and just perfect our future? There's hope for us if you believe in the dream. I love you, America. So love me. Fucking love me not.
Good night.
Mike dropped.
Good night.
Tony.
Good night. Fire. Love you all. Take care.